welcome back to Atypical Talk. This is a podcast where we have conversations that illuminate the intersection of faith, culture, and the common spaces of our humanity. I'm Abby.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Joel.
And we talked about aliens a couple weeks ago, about how there was a UFO report being released. So we wanted to start off by talking about that a little bit. Here's a quick summary of what happened during that report. So during a July 26th congressional hearing, David Grush, United States Air Force officer and former intelligence official, said that he was informed in the course of his official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program to which I was denied access. And he believed that the U.S. government is in possession of UAP based on his interviews with 40 witnesses over 4 years. Grush claimed in response to congressional questions that the U.S. has retrieved non-human biological matter from the pilots of the crafts, and that this was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the UAP program I talked to that are currently still on the program. So, not a whole lot of information was released from that.
Not a whole lot of information specifically, but this is somebody under oath who has, like, if they're lying, they go away to prison. From our government that said non-human biological matter, and that he knows about UAPs. What does UAP stand for again?
Unidentified astronomical aerial phenomena.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, this is a step in a direction that we've never had before, where this is not some crazy dude with a blog on the internet. This is someone who is actually an agent of our government who under oath is swearing to this. So that is a step forward, even though it wasn't like bombshell after bombshell. Here's the picture of the little green man. This is interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the thing for me is that he wasn't able to say, like, these are the people I talked to. These are the people that we found. Or, you know, so it all felt very vague.
Yeah.
So, yes, he was under oath. Like, I don't necessarily think he was lying, but, like, where are the specifics? Like, that's what I need. So I'm like, I don't know. I was hoping for more, I guess, but
yeah, no, I was hoping for more proof too. I feel like, we didn't get a whole lot of the specifics, and it was a lot of, well, I know this, but I can't tell you how I know this. I just know it, and, you know, I know that we have access to this stuff, but there's no, I'm sure it'll come out later, like, since he's given this report.
You know, if there
there's
is
something.
more, if there's something, there
Yeah.
is more that will come out, and maybe this is part of the first rollout to just get people thinking about it, which was funny in some ways because, like, you know, on my Twitter feed or X feed, whatever you call it, there was like this funny thing of like, oh wow, like someone actually under oath from our government admitted that there are aliens. But then, like, we just forget about it so quick, and people really weren't paying that close of attention to it, and just sort of moved on with their day. I'm like, oh, no, this is actually a really big deal, all right? It just kind of moves so quickly.
I saw, like, memes and stuff about it, like, oh, if I still have to pay my mortgage and my student loans and go to work, I don't care what's happening.
I was sending you TikToks in that same vein.
Yeah, then, like, I saw, like, a bunch of articles the next couple days after this report of some people from, like, the religious circles already coming out saying these aren't aliens. They were defiantly and very confidently saying they're demons or they're angels, and, like, trying to, like, quickly define these things in you know, biblical categories, which I'm like, oh, that, man, for not very much information, that just feels so defensive, and that feels so, here's my worldview, and nothing can actually challenge the way that I've understood or read things before. It just reminded me how charged this whole conversation is with fear, and fear of things we don't understand, fear outside of categories and boxes that we are handed as children. And I just try to be cognizant and thoughtful about how fear drives what I believe, what I think about, how I act. And I just saw this so play out with some people in the Christian world that were so quick to say, no, there's no such thing as aliens because there's no Bible verse about aliens, but there are demons and there are angels, and playing so quickly into that whole conversation. I was like, I just don't know how helpful this is. And it was just so quick, and it was easy for me to see how this was all fear driven. And so I just saw a little bit out of that, which I'm like, I'm wrestling with some of that personally, trying to, like, understand, okay, what do I believe about this? So if this was discovered, this doesn't mean that I throw everything I believe about faith, God, the Bible, Jesus, death, resurrection, like out the window. But like, I think there are some people that think like, well, that just proves that the whole thing is just all bunk. It's all made up. Who says bunk? Oh my gosh. It's a nice little Christian swear word, probably. But I've been reading some thoughtful Christ followers just write about it too, and just coming across ideas of, you know, how we can try to understand, like when we discover something new, like it's not that we throw the whole thing out the window, but we can reinterpret, we can re-understand, reanalyze the things that we've held before. Just the same reality with faith and science and creation and science, or faith and evolution and all those different kind of things, where it feels like people have their battle lines drawn and they come in to fight. But yeah, I would hope that whatever we discover, like it just shows again the bigness of God, the vastness of God. If God's creation is so vast and he is so creative, and he's built and created diverse things here, why would it end if there's infinite universes and galaxies? Why would it only be here? Understanding that it would just expand our knowledge and our understanding of his power and creativity, and we'll work with all the tricky theological questions like, did aliens ever sin? So did they need Jesus to die for them? And are they like above us because they never sinned because they weren't on earth and they didn't have God's law? Like all those weird, interesting theological questions that people are swimming in the waters in. I just kind of want to like see what we learn and not be afraid and not be defensive, but like, let's see what we learn and try to understand everything through what we see and what the church tradition is taught and what the scripture teaches and what we believe. But guys, let's not run around with our hair on fire. But, you know, there might be little green men. I will say this though, as if I haven't already been rambling talking. But it is interesting to me how this only seems to be a big conversation right now in the American government.
Oh yeah.
It's fascinating to me. I thought about this during COVID as well, when some people were saying that COVID was completely a hoax and it was all our American government making this thing happen. But I'm like, no, like there are people dying all over the globe. Like this is not like a one place in the world situation. No. But I think of that in the same way with this whole idea about UAPs and aliens. I'm like, well, I know like they're talking about it in our Congress, but this doesn't seem to be like an outrage from other governments. And I'm like, I just always want to take a step back. We talk about this a lot, like understanding that our world is not the world, take a wider view of things. And I'm like, it's interesting that this is not like, there's not protests of people in Paris saying, they're talking about this in America, bring the truth forward, we.
It's probably because they think we're crazy.
Yeah,
like, they're probably looking at us like, oh my.
Stupid Americans, which might be true. But it is just this interesting thing how like United States centric this conversation seems to be right now, where I'm like, if there was, don't you think there'd be other kind of things being talked about in other governments and other high levels of conversation? Maybe there are, and we're just not getting the same kind of press about it. Or maybe it's being hushed in these other places. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought to me. But bring it on. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it all out. Little green men. Maybe they'll be nicer than they were in Independence Day and signs. I don't know.
One can hope.
We can hope.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Maybe I've seen other things, as some people saying the world is such a mess that they're going to like land here, make their appearance, and they're going to meet a couple of us and be like, we're good. We'll go invade another planet.
This place is a mess.
This place is a hot mess. Let's move on. There might be a little of that.
So our first article today, it's a Guardian article titled Hawaii Wildfires. How did the deadly Maui fire start and what caused it? Unprecedented wildfires are burning on the Hawaiian island of Maui and have displaced thousands of residents, destroying parts of a centuries-old town and killed at least 53 people. The disaster is one of the deadliest U.S. wildfires in recent years. The fast-moving fires, fanned by the winds of a distant hurricane, exploded overnight and moved so quickly that some residents jumped into the ocean to escape the flames and smoke. The fires appeared to have burned first in dry vegetation and then rapidly spread into populated areas as wind gusts of over 60 miles per hour rocked the island. Climate change not only increases the fire risk by driving up temperatures and drying out the vegetation, but also makes stronger hurricanes more likely. In turn, those storms could fuel stronger wind events like the one behind the Maui fires. So when did you guys hear about this, and what was your reaction to hearing about this in Maui?
Yeah, so I started seeing videos on TikTok last week about it. And initially I'm like, what's actually, like, what is happening? You know, because it was videos of tourists who are on vacation at these like luxury resorts, and the sirens start going off. You know, they saw like smoke in the distance, but they would ask the people like, do we need to be concerned about this? And they're like, oh no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And then like all of a sudden they're having to pack up their 3 kids and all their stuff and find a place to go. And terrifying. And you can't get off, you know, like there's nowhere to go. So what do you do? So it was a lot of that. And then afterwards, just people on bikes recording videos as they like rode through this burned out town, burned out cars, you know, and then videos of people literally abandoning their vehicles and jumping into the ocean, which I think I may have told you the other day. I'm like, you know, some people are scared of the ocean anyways, and sharks and all the things that live in it. And so to think that like your options are stay here on this island that is literally on fire, or jump into the water where you know there are sharks and things that can, you know, kill you. So it all felt very just apocalyptic in a lot of ways, like the videos, just watching these burned out towns. I mean, it's stuff that we see in the movies, you know, that's not supposed to be real life kind of situations. But yeah, my heart was literally just broken for these people.
It felt very unreal, right? Like it felt very much like a movie, like you said, like a post-apocalyptic. The world had already ended, and you just sort of see the embers still burning all around, and you're like, wait, like this is in our time in the United States of America, in a place that's known for like beauty and luxury and relaxation, like it's its entire thing, right? And it's just sort of like all burning down right around you, and it just felt very unreal. Like at first, I remember seeing like a headline about it. I'm like, oh, a fire in Maui. That sounds terrible. Then I kept seeing more and more, and I'm like, do they not get this under control?
Right.
And then to think, as we've seen some of the footage and hearing some of the stories, you're like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? Like that's my question of like, how were we so unprepared? And to think about being on an island and really no place to go, that's a really terrifying notion. And there's something like chilling about the reality of like going on a vacation to relax and then being like in fear for your life in tragic ways, which is like, man, it just sort of feels like life is a vapor, and my gosh, everything can change so quickly. But yeah, I was just kind of blown away by it, and the imagery is shocking. I've been to Maui. I was thinking back, I think I was in my sophomore year in high school. My family, we took a vacation where we were on island for one day. I think we were on Maui for like one day, one night kind of thing. And I just remember the only memory I really have of it is like everywhere you turned, it kind of looked like a postcard. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever been at that point in my life. And I'm like, wow, everywhere you look, like it's not very commercialized in a really cool way. And it was just really beautiful. And thinking about like, oh my gosh, now the rebuild, think about how many lives, I mean, not only the tragedy of people dying from this, but the economy and how the time it's going to take to build it back up. And it's a tragedy. It's a really scary thing. And I just have so many questions about like, so this happened just completely naturally, and like what is it about the way that we're living and using our planet that these things happen more and more?
Because I was thinking about that too. Like it hasn't been that long that we had all that smoke from Canada here in Indiana because Canada was on fire, you know? And so you're like, I feel like we are hearing about this a lot more. So I'm like, is it just that we're hearing about it more? Is it happening more? Like, I don't know a single thing about climate change, not one thing, but like,
it feels like it's happening so much.
Anecdotally, it really does. It does feel like it is happening a lot more. And to think like, what we know is that overall the planet is getting warmer and things are changing and things are melting at paces and rates that they weren't before. At least we don't have during recorded history. And so, of course, these things are all going to change, you know, and to think like, okay, like, is this just the new normal, or are we going to consider like different ways to treat our home? Because this is terrifying. I think one of the other things that just came to my mind in this is like, we think about crises that happen so far away from us, and we can so quickly just go to, oh man, that sucks, or that's sad. I think back to, I remember hearing Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I remember him talking years ago about being scared of what he saw on the news, and his parents told him to always look for the helpers in these situations that are scary. And when I think about our response, I always want and long for a faithful, compassionate, healing presence to come in these situations that are people that follow Jesus. And I've just been thinking a lot about the churches in Maui. I've been thinking about people that are doing good work on the ground in Maui, and thinking about, okay, like from this tragedy is a beautiful opportunity to show their neighbors that this is it's not just an oh shucks, this sucks moment. This is a opportunity to show them God's love and show them that God cares about them and their needs in the here and now, and to really do some beautiful restoration work in that community and in that city and on the island. So I'm just always like longing to hear those stories about rebuilding and restoration, and longing to hear that people that are followers of Jesus want to get involved in that work. And so even us in Indiana, as as the experts in emergencies and these traumas, they do their first responder work. Like, what are ways that we can support people there and love people there, instead of just being like, oh, that's terrible. That's easy to do, right? But how can we be helpers? How can we look for the helpers? How can we celebrate those stories of the helpers in these tragedies? I think that's the powerful step for all of us to consider our part in, and especially those on the ground in Maui. So for all of our Hawaiian listeners, you have an incredible opportunity to shine Jesus, to live like Jesus, to meet chaos with peace and hope. And I'm just praying for beautiful stories to come out of this, from the rubble and from the brokenness, to see some restoration and some good stuff stir in there.
So our next article today is an NPR article by Anya Archie titled "Micheal Oher of The Blind Side Says He Wasn't Adopted but Put in a Conservatorship." The Blind Side is a 2009 movie chronicling the real-life story of Micheal Oher, a homeless black teen that was adopted by the Tui family. Oher has alleged that a central part of his story, that he was adopted by a wealthy family, is false. Instead of adopting him, he said the family established a conservatorship in which they profited from his name, image, and likeness. Journalist and author Michael Lewis wrote a book about Oher's life called The Blind Side: Evolution of the Game, which was published in 2006. The Tuis began negotiating a movie adaptation of the book with 20th Century Fox later that year. The Blind Side went on to make at least $300 million at the worldwide box office. The Tuis made millions, while Oher received nothing. So did this come as a surprise to you, and why or why not?
For me, it's giving Britney Spears vibes. Like, I don't understand, I guess, conservatorships very much, because this whole thing just makes me so sad. Like, the man is 37 years old, and only now, first of all, just found out he doesn't actually have familial relationship with the Tuis. Like, my mind is blown about that, because they've been together since he was 16. But then also, like, he has full mental capacities. Like, he's had an NFL career, yet he can't enter or negotiate contracts or make medical decisions by himself. Like, yeah. So that's where I just do not understand how this all works, especially when, like, I'm pretty sure I read in this article that you mentioned that it was supposed to end by the time he was 25 or before, if a court granted it. So, like, how are we still here?
Yeah.
At 37? I don't understand.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
Send help.
So the article mentioned that still at 37, he has to check in with them on things. That's
part of the conservatorship, is that he can't negotiate contracts. But I'm like, you were in the NFL. Like, they have contracts. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. I feel like I just don't understand enough about that, because it'd be one thing you know, they were sort of profiting just from the story through the book and the movie. But like the fact that, I feel like there's something I don't understand inside of this.
Well, and then they said they didn't make any money off the movie, and
just the book.
But
if the movie was based off the book, there's probably a multiplying effect there. Nice little loophole, maybe.
Right. Yeah. That's why I'm like, that can't possibly be true, right? Like,
because like this article said that they made millions off of it, but then
they say they made nothing.
They've come out since this article was posted saying that they made nothing and all of this is lies. So it's a whole confusing
it's
thing.
complicated too. It's complicated to think like, why now is this coming to the forefront after his playing career is over? And you know, we just don't probably know enough. It's just, I'm just left with sadness over this, because
me too.
It's just terrible. Again, it just feels like another story of people taking advantage of somebody who doesn't know anything and putting it under the guise of care and love. But again, I guess we don't know enough, and you're innocent until proven guilty, which is a good thing. It just seems so messy and complicated to be 37 and, you know, bringing this back up. And man, just the betrayal inside of this, between like trying to find it out and understand what it actually was. And I don't know, it's so complicated. The one thing that comes to my mind too, of like, if he's, you know, suing to try to get those resources back and to make some of the money that he feels was rightfully his, you know, revenge is an interesting game. Like there's a fine line between justice and revenge, and this is so personal that I don't know how it's not tinged with like revenge and anger and because of hurt. And so now if he was do that and this is all true, then he is totally, like, it is an injustice that he doesn't have the access to these things. But there's just an element of it that makes me feel like, man, it just feels like anger and like revenge, to where I'm like, Michael, like you're not gonna this isn't gonna fix that in that way, you know. And even if the resources gets to you, which might be rightfully yours, revenge just doesn't ever deliver on what it promises, and it's still going to like lead to some brokenness and some pain and some hurt. So ultimately, you know, my hope for this whole situation are two things: that the truth comes out and justice is served, but that also that there would be some kind of restoration between this family and Micheal Oher, because there was deep-seated familial connection and the way that they brought him into their home, even if it wasn't legally adopting. So there's got to be so much of those long played out feelings and emotions that I hope that there can be some restoration between them, or at least an opportunity to apologize and for there to be restitution in that, instead of just, I want my money, I hate you, and I'm not going to give you your money because it's our money, and like this kind of like the standoffish thing, which plays out so often. But it just feels so messy and sad that I hope that the truth does come out and that justice is served. But on a personal level, I hope that there can be some kind of restoration, if possible, inside the relationships, because this just does not play out well for anybody.
No.
It's
but
so sad.
Do you think that there actually was like familial love from the Tuohys, considering that they started off the relationship by getting a conservatorship over this
instead of an adoption?
Yeah. Because if they truly loved him, they would have adopted him into their family and cared for him, but they used his conservatorship and profited off of him. So it almost feels like there wasn't love to begin with.
If that's the way it played out, then I totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And maybe there's more legally that I don't understand about the conservatorship. That's not just about profiting. I don't know. I guess I don't know the law, but I totally see where you're coming from. That to be like, well, if it was love, you would just say just you're ours and we're adopting you in. And then if that's
and then
the case,
hurt too. Like if that's so what he thought it was.
Because
it's multiplied.
He thought he was
then
adopted.
the hurt is multiplied.
Because
then you find out you're not.
So think about that betrayal when he finds out that he wasn't, and that they were, if this is true, that they were profiting off of him the whole time when he thought it was this actual familial love. Yeah, it's so messy, but I don't know. It just it sounds dark and
it's so sad.
Thanks,
I loved
Hollywood.
that movie.
Giving us all the warm
and now
fuzzies.
I'm like, it's tainted.
Yep.
Sandra Bullock
hurts my heart.
Why? We'll see. I guess maybe as more news comes out, we can come back to it, and hopefully there's more to both sides of the story than what we're currently getting now. We can hope for that.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll come back to it when we learn more.
So our next question is, what was your first job and what do you still remember from it?
So I worked at a local dry cleaners starting when I was 15, and it was hot. Like that is one of the main things that I remember, because you just have all this steam and heat, and it was just, the building wasn't air conditioned, because honestly, what even was the point when you're just it's constant steam in there. And then also people's clothes just surprised me. And I think, obviously I've lived a lot more life since I was 15, but just seeing like some people's clothes were just covered in pet hair, just not just and not just like, oh, I need to go get a lint roller. No, like covered,
like their animals were sleeping on their clothes.
Yes,
or something.
and doing other things. They smelled so bad. So
look at that character building first job you had.
It really was. It did teach me how to deal with the public in a lot of ways.
Enjoy that $6.25 an hour.
Yeah, exactly. It probably was. But so that was my first job, and I could not wait to not be working there anymore.
Yeah, my first job, I can't remember if I've shared this on the podcast before or just talked about it in other spaces, but I worked 3 hours a day from 3 to 6 at the church that I grew up at. They had a daycare ministry, and so from 3 to 6 I was Mr. Joel at this daycare, to where I came in and did nap and playtime and activity. I took them to a 30-minute chapel that I got to like create with. I would like play silly songs and then a couple worship songs and do a little Bible lesson. So it's my first little gig in ministry. Look at that. And then the last 30 minutes of the day, what I remember the most is the hot movie at the time was Finding Nemo. And so we, as parents were picking up kids, we would just get them all down in basically one room. And so I've seen the first 30 minutes of Finding Nemo hundreds.
It's
hundreds
a classic. It's a classic.
So yeah, I did that. And then in the summer I would work all day, and it was the coolest gig there because they had an hour and a half nap time.
Bring it back.
So man, I would just like sit in the corner of a room where they were napping. I'm like, I'm getting paid like a cool $6.75 for this, and get to chill and strum on a guitar probably. But yeah, that was my first job, and I was affectionately known as, or maybe it was ironically known as, Mr. Joel. And so I run into people now that are like in their 20s and be like, hey, Mr. Joel. I'm like, oh man, I am so old, and this is so weird. That was my first job at a daycare.
What about you, Abby?
Well, I mean, I did a lot of like babysitting and stuff, but like, you know, my first regular like paycheck job was working at an ice cream shop in a small town. And when we moved to this small town, I was like, oh, this is Adventures in Odyssey vibes. I'm going to go work at this little ice cream shop. It was not what I imagined. I went home sticky every day. And then there was one day that like this person was ordering, and I was just like thrown onto the cash register for the first time. Like they were like, go cover this guy's order. I'm like, I don't even know how to run this cash register. So I just started crying in the middle of this guy's order.
How old were you?
I was like 14.
Oh,
yeah.
14 years old.
So this guy felt so bad, but my boss was getting so mad at me.
Oh no.
And so it was not a fun experience. My boss was rude all the time.
I was going to say, was this the same boss that you've mentioned that used to yell at people across the street? Like, was there or was that the pizza shop?
That was the pizza shop. I also worked.
She's had a lot of great bosses. I'm the best boss she's ever had.
I'm just kidding.
I worked at a pizza shop, and there was another pizza shop right across the road. And my boss would sit out on the porch and heckle people going into the other pizza shop.
So terrible.
What a classy guy.
Yep.
What a classy guy.
Oh, no.
You're going to get sick tonight.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Man.
But a lot of interesting high school jobs.
You would think that working at an ice cream shop
would be the dream,
because everybody's happy to see you, and like you're giving them something that they love.
Yeah.
And you would think that like you're gonna make everybody happy, but there was a dark side. To the
Yeah.
ice cream shop. Dark side. Yeah.
So our last topic today is a Mashable article titled "A New Washington State Bill Takes the First Step in Legislating Rights for Child Influencers." The proposed law, titled "Protecting the Interests of Minor Children Featured on For-Profit Family Vlogs," would ensure that children featured in online content, such as family vlogs, would receive appropriate compensation for any profit-generating media. It requires parents to funnel a portion of content revenue into a separate fund for children to access when they're adults. The law also would enshrine a right to privacy for these children once they've reached legal adult status, allowing them to petition to have videos and other content deleted. One of the minds behind the bill is Chris McCarty, an 18-year-old freshman and political science major at the University of Washington, who became interested in child protection after following the story of influencer Micah Stauffer. Stauffer became embroiled in online controversy after she and her husband relinquished their newly adopted child back to the state, all while profiting from the numerous vlogs they posted about it to YouTube. So what are your guys' thoughts on family vlogs? Do you think there's anything wrong with them? What are your thoughts on ones that you've seen?
Ones that I've seen?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna play old man card here. Like, family vlogs is a thing and people are making money off of it.
Yes.
This is a whole corner of the internet that I know nothing about. And I just have, I've talked about this before, but I'm not a reality TV guy, and I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of reality TV, or at least in 20 years probably. And so, like, it's just not sort of my bag. So thinking about, like, oh man, there are people that are just like recording their families all the time and then making a step from that to be like they're making money off of it, and these kids can't really decide. Like, it's like, what are we doing and how did we get here? And talk about using kids for your own benefit instead of your kids being there as a way that you can love them, protect them, and set them up and guide them to be adults. Wow, we have gotten some things upside down. So this is the whole idea of family vlogs. I can't wrap my head around. Like, as fake as, reality TV is with being scenes and, setting things up. Like, these are people and they're kids that are life is already hard enough for them through, being a child and adolescence today. And we're going to add, like, the weight of celebrity and likes, and I need you to say that thing that you said off camera a couple minutes ago, because that's gonna be really funny in this scene if we have the camera on. Oh my gosh, this is so gross, and it's so exploitative, in my understanding. So I guess I'll play the old man card and just be like, I don't get it. Can we make a bill just to stop all family vlogs for profit, or all family vlogs? Can't you? Whatever happened? Here we go. Whatever happened to just having family memories for you? I don't know. But I don't quite get it.
Well, so few things are private anymore with social media, and somebody always has a camera on somewhere, kind of a thing. But, I think about as a kid, like, if I would have had the camera on me from sun up to sundown, like, the thought of it now as an adult is exhausting. So I can't imagine as a kid, like, being expected, I don't even want to say to perform, but I guess it is kind of that, feeling like you have to be on all the time. And, that's draining. It's just exhausting, but it's also scary from a safety perspective. Like, I've seen, people on TikTok are better than the FBI. I apologize to anybody in the FBI, but I promise you, you post a picture of you at a pool, and in 2 minutes, the people on TikTok know exactly where you're at, what pool you're at. They've been there. They know somebody that lives near there, so like, just those things, that's scary, because kids, they don't always know strangers. And so if somebody walks up to them because they think they know them because they've seen so many vlogs and TikToks or videos and stuff, like, they know a lot about you, and so you could walk up to this kid and say, hey, your mom told me at dance class that you like da-da-da-da, and so she told me to pick you up. And this kid's going to be like, okay, they know my mom, they know I go to dance class, they know my friends, whatever, like, they know a lot about me. And so then your walls come down. And so it's such a safety risk. And so as a mom, like, it's scary. And, I think you posted a Reddit article or something too, where, like, somebody mentioned that their sibling, like, had an attempted kidnapping because they thought this person was familiar to the family, but they actually weren't. They were a stranger that they had seen all of their stuff. So it's just, it's scary. Yeah. Stranger danger is a real thing, and it still needs to be a real thing. So I don't know. That's what intimidates me, I guess.
Yeah. On the topic of that Reddit post, I have some of it written down here. So Reddit user Throwaway Listeners made a post on the Reddit community True Off My Chest titled, I was brought up by family vloggers and it ruined my life. A portion of her post says, I'm going to list some stuff that happened and how it affected us. My siblings and I were so paranoid there was cameras on us that the only place we felt comfortable changing was in the bathroom with the lights off. I couldn't talk to my mom about anything when my mental health began to get bad because I was too scared she'd share it online. If I'd asked her not to, it wouldn't have made a difference. I now barely have a relationship with my mom. My mom considered homeschooling us so that she'd have more time to make content during the day. Oof. My best friend's mom said that she didn't want my friend to be my friend anymore because my mom kept filming her without permission. My mom didn't care how upset I was. I didn't have a single private moment. My mom woke me up with the camera on, and she often filmed right until we went to sleep. She filmed us in the bath, and although she's tried to get it off the internet, it's downloaded and online forever. She shared when I got my period, even though I told her I didn't want her to. Someone attempted to kidnap my sister and found it easy because they knew her full name, address, school, and details about her. My sister didn't know he was a stranger because he knew so much about her. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you think that this legislation will actually have an effect on this? Like, do you think it will lessen the amount of family vlogs or have people be more cautious online?
I mean, we can hope.
We can hope. I mean, it might like not make it an incentive to do it in that way. But man, I always try to go like, what's the thing underneath the thing? Mm-hmm. You know, because like it might stop some of it, but underneath of it is a deeper reality of people trying to live through their kids to get something out of their kids. I mean, I liken it to a father or a mother like living for their kids' successes at sports, to where they're like, mm-hmm. if their kid had a great day, you know, if they went 3 for 3 from the plate, then they're going to be in a good mood and their kid's going to get ice cream. But if they struck out 3 times, everybody's in a terrible mood and it's almost like a punishment. Yeah. And so we like live for that success. And there's a difference between being like proud of your kid when he does well. There's some degrees there, right? Mm-hmm. But like it just feels like we're again using and exploiting. And the thing underneath the thing there is like, what are we missing so much that we feel like we've got to live through mm-hmm. them or get something out of them, squeeze all that we can out of them? Because I heard somebody say once that children are a great gift from God, but they're a terrible God. Mm-hmm. And when we make them everything and the end of everything, then we're going to be riding the highs and lows of their experiences as well. And that is a weight way too heavy for our kids to bear, which you sort of see through this Reddit user's experience of growing up with a family vlogger. So until people don't get their greatest joy from likes, shares, money they can make from their kids' stories, and they find a deeper joy that's more satisfying, that doesn't exploit somebody else, then we're going to see more and more of this as mm-hmm. the internet becomes a more integral part of modern life. Mm-hmm. But man, it shouldn't shouldn't be this way. Yeah. And it sort of sees like a disordered reality to where we're trying to get something from our kids that's just so gross and it just exploits them. Mm-hmm. I know I've said that a lot, but that's just really what this is. It's another type of slavery, another type of using somebody as a product instead of a human being to be loved and cherished and guided. And that's the thing that I'm a little nervous about, like a generation now that are parents that were grown up with the internet and social media to where they were getting their greatest joy and their dopamine hits from likes and shares. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now those people have kids. And you think that's just going to turn off? Yeah. No,
the attention seeking just turns, I mean, it can turn in a lot of different ways, you know, and so, it can get really dark. It's just real messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen a lot of like TikTok users and people who use social media who have heard stories like the one that this Reddit user posted and have decided to completely take their kids off social media, even though that's like the main reason a lot of people would go to their page, because their kids are cute or they say funny things and stuff. And it's huge for them to be making that decision because, you know, they're not getting near as many views anymore, but they're making these decisions because of hearing stories like this. So I think stories like this help. This legislation will probably help, but there's going to be some people who won't care either way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's it for this episode of Atypical Talk. If you have any questions, topics you'd like us to talk about, anything like that, email those to atypicaltalkpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at atypicaltalkpod. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to get updates when new episodes are uploaded. We hope that these conversations today have helped you think wider, love deeper, and partner with God to bring the up there, down here in your everyday life. Thanks for listening.